to...
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to this webinar. We're about to introduce you to Andrew Geddes from Creating Business Leaders, Company Director. So I'm now going to change the presenter to Andrew. Hello Andrew, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Peter. You should be able to see my screen.
Yes, I can see that now. It's on the screen.
Lovely. And if you just hit record, we can make a start. Just give me the word once you're ready.
Yeah, we're recording. Yep, we're right now.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Andrew Geddes here. Peter has asked me to join him for 3 separate webinars to tell the story about my involvement with Green Cross Limited over 30 years, as you can see, from a single veterinary clinic to a top 200 ASX listed company. The 3 webinars, there's today's one, which will look at the journey that we took and the tools that we used. On December the 5th, I'm going to look at it in a lot more detail in terms of how we really drove growth. We had to do quite a bit of work on our internal management system to be able to move from about 30 vet clinics to over 150 over a 10-year period. And then finally, June next year, one of the tools I created in my involvement with Green Cross was a leadership improvement plan for each of the senior executives. We'll walk our way through that as well. So there's the 3 topics coming up over the next 9 months. So the Green Cross story, we started out when I first met Dr. Glenn Richards. He was an undergraduate at the University of Sydney, and I ran a program for the final year students of both Queensland and New South Wales universities. Oops, let me go back again. Then the stages of growth we went through, we were a cooperative for a while. We got ready to list in the mid-2005 to 6. Then the early growth years when we built a strong senior management team, merging with Petbarn in 2014 and then refreshing the board in 2017 when I retired from the board. After 13 years on the board and probably about 25 years involved with Glenn. So they're the stages that we went through that we're going to address today. So the initial meeting, as I said, was a graduate workshop sponsored by the Universities of Queensland and the Sydney Uni's veterinary faculties. It was a weekend program. At the time, we were running business management and development programs for all sorts of professionals, accountants, engineers and veterinarians and others. So we spent a weekend putting the final year students through the program. We had a barbecue and a few beers that night, and I spent quite a bit of time getting to know Glenn, and we struck up a friendship. Several years after that, Glenn purchased a practice in Townsville, talked to me about purchase of that business, and he opened some other clinics and a retail pet store, and so began his journey. At that stage, we got together with a number of other veterinarians who had multiple clinics. A group in Brisbane, a group in Sydney, a group in Melbourne, plus Glenn from Townsville, and we focused on really skilling up our veterinary nurses, practice managers, and then we looked at the standards of care we used in the clinics and asked the veterinarians to help us develop some higher standards of care and to drive this across all of the clinics. That led to using the name Green Cross and working together with brand development and marketing. And the real winner financially was when we went to the wholesalers and said, if we put all of our purchases through you as a group, what can you do for us? And that put a few percentage points on the bottom line of every clinic. One of the things we did do was get together regularly and share our business experiences, usually over dinner and a few fine wines, and that helped us create rapport and develop the relationship between all our members. At that stage, we were approached by another group of veterinary practices that had agreed to form themselves into a group to see if they could get together and list on the stock exchange. Their group and our group looked like about 60 practices. We then had to go through a search for non-executive board members, so we invited one of the joint CEOs of Pet Barn veterinary retailers to join our board. Dr. Glenn Richards was already serving on their board. We then sought accountants, lawyers and underwriters for the list, recruited some senior executives, and with our full of enthusiasm and hope, we listed in 2006. We were a micro-cap list, probably far too small. I think we should have been 2 to 3 times the size, but that's one of the lessons from hindsight. The resulting situation was that no institutional investors invested in us because we were too small, and we really had to grow the company. We were able to raise finance from a group of banks, and we then looked at our senior management group and realised we had to purchase and bring in at least double the number of veterinary practices that we had within a couple of years. And that meant we had to build a senior management team who were really focused on acquiring veterinary practices, doing the due diligence, and then assimilating them into the group. We realised that we had to create a strong culture, so the senior management team were asked to craft some core values, which they did, and that, I think, was the reason for our success, because we knew who we needed and what we were trying to achieve and what was acceptable and not acceptable in terms of attitude and behaviour. So in looking at this, I'll just share with you the core values that the senior management team created. As you can see, our purpose was to share our love and passion for animals through the pursuit of veterinary excellence, hence the importance of the standards of care. The senior management group came up with some core values structured around teamwork, and notice the use of the word we will. We will create an environment that promotes collaboration and harmony among our teams. We will demonstrate a caring attitude that respects and values our clients' and teammates' beliefs and opinions. Then in integrity, we will always be authentic, we will always be honest. In terms of professionalism, we will be fair and ethical and deliver confident, competent and conscientious care for clients, patients and teammates. Now that's the unique nature of veterinary practice, in that you have customers, then you've got the animals who are the patients, and you've got your colleagues, so you're really catering to a group of 3. The team thought excellence, doing our best and delivering uncompromising standards of care would set us apart, and we looked at having innovation in the way we went about doing business so that we could create a senior management group that ran a head office that provided great services to the veterinary practices that we purchased and then assimilated. Now, going back to the core values, we then used them by building a story around each core value based on what a team member had done. That was built into newsletters. We used it in recruiting and selection by asking questions around behaviour related to those values. We used it in induction and orientation sessions and in performance appraisal, and in giving feedback to individuals, thanking them for doing the right thing and or pointing out when they didn't and asking them to adjust their behaviour. So in the early years, the focus was to create a positive culture around those values, to grow a senior management team that enabled us to handle growth. Then having hit those objectives, we really built the group over 5 years. We probably got there in half the time we thought we were going to need. And at that stage, we had been discussing the possibility of merging with Petbarn in order to create a vertically integrated offering to pet owners in terms of they could obtain veterinary care and quality food and products for the care of their pets. At the time, the humanisation of pets is where a pet becomes a family member, sleeps on the bed with their owners in a lot of cases. So the whole merger was based on creating a business that would be convenient for our clients. It allowed the private equity investors in Petbarn to exit. We added 2 new board members to the board with merchant banking and retail experience. And at the same time, I stepped down as chairman and asked one of the experienced directors that we had, who had been a managing director of a large financial organisation, to step into the chair's role. He was more acceptable to the institutional investors we were trying to attract, and we were able to do so when we did merge with Petbarn through a capital raising. The commercial reasons were to locate clinics within the big retail box stores so that it was more convenient for clients, and that certainly drove the business into its next stage. Then in 2017, my term as a non-executive director was up and I didn't seek re-election. I'd been there for more than 10 years, and the ASX governance suggests directors shouldn't serve beyond that. We also were looking to get some more women serving on our board. The proxy advisory firms acting for institutional investors who assess the annual reports and the remuneration reports would not recommend those reports to institutional investors unless you adhered with the ASX governance suggestions. So that's another example of how the governance standards are influencing decisions on boards in Australia, and something that you need to be aware of over time. The lessons from this journey were listings expensive. The initial listing about $500,000, and the ongoing costs in terms of accountants' reports, audits done annually, the tours you have to put on in terms of communicating with institutional investors. I think we were too small to list and should have waited, but that's a lesson that we now have on board. I reckon 100 million turnover at least, and possibly 10 to 20% EBIT. Otherwise, those costs really are quite large. The managing director or CEO needs to build a senior management team based on trust, so that there can be rigorous debate and analysis of both strategies and risks. It's very important to manage a high growth company that's moved from a number of smaller private businesses, small businesses in fact, into a company that's really served by a senior management team providing services in terms of marketing and accounting and recruitment, standards of care, negotiations with suppliers in terms of purchasing. You've got to be able to onboard and integrate and look after the individual clinics that you acquire to service that type of growth. And the board needs to support this by serving all of the stakeholders, the senior management group, the individual practitioners in the clinics, and local communities, suppliers. I believe that the board supported the senior management group, who were able to achieve this growth and bed those companies in. So that's the journey that we went through over 30 years. We moved from 30 clinics to initial listing of 60 odd clinics up to over 150 and over 250 retail stores, and the growth continues as we speak. So in the webinars that are coming up, I will build on that by going into more detail about the way we built the senior management team and then the way we develop leadership skills within it in the third webinar that occurs in June 2019. So thank you, Peter. That's my little bit more than 10 minutes as you requested. Perhaps I can turn it back to you at this stage. I can't hear you. You've muted. You've got to unmute yourself, Peter. I think I can't hear you.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I'm now unmuted. Thank you very much, Andrew. That was a very interesting presentation, and we look forward to hearing your further comments in the future recordings. So thank you very much, and we'll now finish this segment.
Thanks, Peter. Pleasure.
Thanks, Andrew.